But last but not least, I want to talk about comic Drake. So I hate when people. I do it sometimes, but I try not to do it too much. When people like to
Mm-hmm.
comment on a video, especially a YouTube video, and start to criticize it without even knowing what the person's talking about. If it's a bigot, that's different because you know what they're going
Right.
to be talking about. There's no need to even try to watch it to figure out what they're doing and give them that type of attention.
Platform.
But
Yeah.
but this was a video from Comic Drake, who is not known to be a bad person by any means. He's just a comic book YouTuber, and people like to hate on comic book YouTubers because. So the reason people like to hate on comic book YouTubers because they are upset at how they've affected the comic book community, which isn't the fault of those YouTubers. It's more a fault of just the people who think that they are an authority on comic books simply because they watch somebody talk about a comic book in a YouTube video.
Right.
That is not on the YouTuber. That is on the people who thought that is on the people who watched the video.
Right.
And they tend to assign the blame to those comic book YouTubers who almost always in their videos suggest, "Hey, go actually read this comic."
Right.
Um, but Comic Drake made a video about essentially how comics can learn from manga. Let me see what the exact title is. It is Comics Need Saving, Manga's Winning Secrets. And somebody, made a tweet. Uh, Again, I should have put this in my notes, but let me see if I can find the tweet exactly. So they say, I haven't watched it yet, but I just know this is going to be the most annoying video of all time. With like Comic Drake, he's an amazing YouTuber. I don't understand why
Mhm.
people hate on Comic Drake so much, but what he talked about is essentially how, like, I think what a lot of people were afraid he was going to say is that comic American comics should be released in the same way that manga is, which is in a way that exploits the workers and
I was about to say
has
that's
them
not sustainable at
working
all.
exactly not sustainable at all, having them working overtime all the time. And
Right.
that is the in fact he actually says the complete opposite, but a lot of people assume that for some reason that is what he was going to say when it's never been any something he's ever really thought or said in any of his videos really. Instead he says
Mm.
American comics should like their subscription services first and foremost should be cheaper because was I'm playing for
Right.
DC Universe. I forget how much it costs. I think it might be around like $7 when like um Shonen Jump is like 4. Um
Mm.
and they should offer more free comics online to pull in newcomers. They don't necessarily need to do it the same way Shonen Jump does, where they have like the first 3 chapters and the most recent 3 chapters free to read. Instead, I would say they should have like the first 3 issues free to read, but they don't necessarily need the latest 3 issues free to read.
Right.
And they should also have some of like the tentpole comics, like the popular ones, be free so people can check out the most popular stories. And then
Hmm.
once they read those, they might want to read a lot more, so they'll subscribe or they'll just go out and actually buy some comics.
Right.
Um, the He also says like the single issue model needs to stop, and instead they should just be sold in volumes that collects other related comics. Like for example, if instead of seeing selling a single issue, which is an issue for people who don't know is the equivalent of a chapter, but the reason
Right.
comic book issues are called issues because they used to be sold separately, um, and they still are, but that's no longer sustainable because they cost $5 by themselves, which is as much as a subscription service for a comic book company. And
Right. It's like
for you
comic
to
books
read,
used to cost like a quarter.
yeah,
you know?
but now a single issue like 25 pages something max is $5 by itself, which is ridiculous. And instead, what they should be doing is combining, like if you have a Batman comic, you have all the other Batman adjacent comics collected in one. Like you have an issue of Batman, you have an issue of Detective Comics, you have an issue of Nightwing, you have an issue of Robin, all in one volume, so that you get more bang for your buck. Um,
Right.
and also advertise comics in movie theaters. So sometimes before a movie, and I've been seeing this a lot more in the last 2 movies I watched, minus Blue Beetle, so in Mission Impossible and Ninja Turtles. At the beginning of the movie, the director and like one of the lead actors will like thank the audience for coming to watch the movie, and
Mm.
essentially intro the movie, and then the movie will start. Um, um, do that, have them thank us and all that, but also shout out without necessarily shouting out the comics that might be spoilery for the movie for people who actually know comics, but shout out the
Hmm.
comics that inspire the movie off top while people are sitting down and can't escape.
Yes.
while while they're trapped, tell them which comic books inspired this movie so that people can, actually be like, okay, now that you've actually shown me this and I wasn't really expecting to see this, I'm actually check that comment out, because especially if the movie's good and they leave the movie going, man, that was really good, I want more of this, they might go read the comic.
Right.
And James Gunn proved that it works, because when he announced the slate of upcoming movies in his new DC universe, he also mentioned every comic that was inspiring every single movie that was coming out. And you know what happened? Those comics sold out. So it's been proven that it works if you advertise the comics alongside the movie. But DC is clearly going to be doing this going forward, I'm pretty sure, based on the way James Gunn has been doing it. Because recently he shouted out Wonder Woman Historia, which is an amazing book, and I highly suggest it. It is easily, well, it's called Wonder Woman Historia, The Amazons. Wonder Woman literally does not show up until the very end, and she's a baby. It's more about the creation of the Amazons. So
Right.
and it's not very long. So the art is just ridiculously good. So if you want to get into Wonder Woman, this is a good place to start. It literally is about the creation of the Amazons, and then that leads into the birth of Wonder Woman. And then you can hop into whatever Wonder Woman story you want after that, or look it up and see what people suggest. It's a perfect starting point. He just shouted it out on Twitter, and guess what? It sold out. Do that more. But Marvel is allergic to the comics. They literally will tell some of their directors to not read the comics. They will tell their actors, don't read the comics. They are like ashamed of the medium that is responsible for creating this lucrative universe.
Multi-billion-dollar industry.
Several movies that have breached the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. And for some reason they're ashamed of them. It's like, bro, if it wasn't for these comic books, you would not be here. Advertise the comic books so that the people working on them can make money to keep making these comics, so that you can keep pulling from those stories to keep making these movies and keep making these billions of dollars. That's essentially
losing money by being ham-fisted. It's insane.
Yeah, and also at the end of DC trailers nowadays, they actually will show you some of the most popular comics from that character. They did it with Blue Beetle, they did it with The Flash, they did it with Black Adam. They should keep doing that, and Marvel should start doing that. People want to get into comics, but it looks harder than it is. Like, I understand why people think getting into American comics is hard. It's not that hard, and honestly, some people put in more work avoiding it than it would take to get into it.
Right.
Like,
as a person who was one of those people that's like, I don't know, I don't think comics are for me. I think all the points that you brought up are like some of the biggest reasons that I've avoided American comics all this time, because it's like the single issues, and it's like I know where to start, but at the same time it's like I I'll know where to start, but continuing is a little confusing to me. It's like the accessibility and all that. I'm big about accessibility in mediums, so like comics have never just been like an accessible genre to me, because like I get confused, I get turned around, I'm like, where do I go from here? I know that volume 1 or issue 1 is the first one, but there's all this context that I'm missing, and it makes me scared.
Yeah, I will always suggest like grabbing a volume where you can, because that way you're almost, or an omnibus, so that way you're set. All the stories right there, and you don't have to try and find which issue goes where. Usually if there are like, when you get like a volume and omnibus, usually those like tie-in comics or like things that are low-key sometimes, and I hate when comics do this, it will be important to the story, but it'll be like it won't be included in like the actual, like it won't be like issue 25, it'll be like annual number 2, and you're like, what? And then you don't.
What even is this?
And then you don't read it. So when you get to issue 26, you're like, I'm missing so much context. What is happening? But if you get like, if you get the volume, if you read the volume or the omnibus, it'll have all of that in chronological order.
Right. Okay.
But also the thing about where to go next is, it's you can see it as a flaw, but it's also great is that it doesn't matter most of the time.
Yeah, that is fair.
You just go where you want. You got to lose the thought of where to go next, and of like having a very specific place to go next, and just going, now I can just hop to whatever comic I want.
Right.
Instead of having
to explore.
Exactly. But yeah, that's essentially what Comic Drake was saying. And people, I feel like, didn't watch the video, made assumptions. Watch the video. It's a good video.